All right, y'all. Good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing?
Good,
Good.
good evening.
All right. Why don't everybody take a second and just introduce themselves?
All right.
Start with Hanif.
Go ahead, Hanif. You go first.
Hey everybody, I'm Hanif Nelson, right out of Hartford, Connecticut. I'm a professional musician, educator, and many other things. And I'm always happy to be on this panel with the brothers and sisters talking about issues relative to our community.
Okay. Key.
Keyshawn Dodds, Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club Family Center and also author of the superhero series, the Men's Will Solar Warrior series, and glad to be here again with my family.
So you're going to be a significant part of this conversation.
Yeah, yes I am.
All right. And last but definitely not least, Farah June. How do you pronounce your last name? Make sure we get it right.
It's just June. So my name is Farah June. I'm from Boston. I'm an artist and a local TV producer of a show called Fahrenheit TV, and I'm excited to be here with you guys today.
All right.
All right. And my name is D Moss. I am one of about 6 or 7 moderators on this show. So we're going to get it started. I think first we're going to start with a little bit of what I learned in school.
Recently in school, we were taught how the color white reflects light, but black absorbs light and creates heat. Thinking about the recent images I've seen of rallies and protests, I began to wonder if our black skin had absorbed something to create a fire in us. But I already knew the answer. Even in my brief 17 years of existence, I've heard that my skin color means I'm stupid, I'm lazy, that I'm criminal. It doesn't matter if it's on TV or in person. If you're told something enough times, you begin to wonder if it's true. No, I'm smart. I work hard and I'm a good person. I know these ideas are wrong. So where did they come from? The light we studied in class came from the sun, a product of a violent collision of elements, emitting energy that we absorb every time we step outside. What collision created racism? And why did our society absorb this hateful energy? I went looking for answers. Some of the racist attitudes we face today seem to have started when slavery was institutionalized to justify the actions of the slave owners. This attitude was absorbed by founding fathers when our third president, Thomas Jefferson, claimed blacks are inferior to whites. It was absorbed by scientists when they began comparing our physical features to apes. It was absorbed by criminologists who called us impulsive and lazy. Some of these ideas were the top-selling books of their time. It was all too familiar, but it still made me angry. I wanted to tear the book apart in my hands, but I knew that wouldn't change the past, and I'm not about to destroy public property, so I'll put them back where I found them. After reading about all that hate, I needed a good dose of hope and common sense. I found it in a book published in the 1820s called An Appeal to Colored Citizens of the World by David Walker.
I know well that there are some talents and learning among the colored people of this country, which we have not a chance to develop in consequence of oppression. But our oppression ought not to hinder us from acquiring all we can, for we will have a chance to develop them by and by.
A chance to live out of the shadow of oppression. A chance to develop myself to my full potential without the world telling me I'm unworthy. The roots of racism run deep, but I see the same future that David Walker did 200 years ago. The world should no longer absorb these false messages. We are light and racism is the dark, and I'll keep shining until I have created enough heat to erase it from existence.
God's walked in.
Rejoice together, for the time we are living in is the time for reclaiming our own. Brothers, listen to me.
Did you know that God's walk here? Did you know God's walk here?
All right, everybody. Well, we're on deck. So,
all right.
Today we're talking about storytelling and why it's so important. We're talking about narrative and how do we as Black people. Oh, this is a show for anybody tuning in for the first time. This is a show about Black people, and it's all about being Black in America. So we're going to talk about the Black narrative and how it's told through storytelling and how we use it in our poetry, in our visual art, in our music, in our literature, whether it's a novel or whether it's an animated comic. So we'll get right into it. Keyshawn, I'm gonna let you kick it off, being that you are a resident author, and talk about the importance of Black characters, Black storylines, and Black narrative.
Well, thanks, D Moss. I appreciate that, man. Man, it's very important. So first, before we go any further, I do got to give a rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman, who played Black Panther, and he played a lot of different other characters, but came to light for all of us as Black Panther, and really set the stage to letting us see a Black superhero finally in the mainstream. And that movie, man, I just had to watch it again last night for probably the umpteenth time. Just hit home, knowing that this brother was so talented and so blessed with the talent of storytelling and bringing a character to life, and to see his life being taken out so young by colon cancer, and he hid that, and he did all this work when he was filming while he was dealing with cancer, and never let people know what he was feeling. He is a true superhero. So, this show is going to be dedicated to him. I don't think anybody's going to even ignore that, because, he was a big time feel for what we are going through now as storytellers, and also seeing the Black culture grow and seeing our kids have something to love. But as storytellers, like I said, man, it's very important that we have stories where kids and adults can see people that look like them, that they can relate to, they can grow up with, and they can also, empathize and see and feel for and grow. So I think it's more important that we have stories through science fiction, through fiction, through romance, that you see that you can relate to these characters, and you're not seeing the stereotypical of what they think our characters are, from slave movies to gangster movies, or somebody being a crackhead or absentee, whatever they want to do. We bring into light some great characters that people can actually love and see, that have powerful meaning throughout history and life. So we're building, and I think it's very important that we have that.
All right. And can you take a moment to also introduce Braxton?
Yeah, because I know his mic is muted. Maybe he can unmute it, but so until he can get unmuted, I know his camera's off. But Braxton, he's here. So good. So Braxton Cosby is the founder of Cosby Media Productions down in Atlanta, Georgia. We linked up about 5-6 years now. Yep. And brought our dreams together, our collective creativity together. And Braxton has really just set the precedent of what independent Black authors can do with their own independent business, growing the company, making sure that the voices are heard. They're not watered down. They're not, taken out of context. We get to tell our stories and have full rights into your own work and the way your direction goes. And he just really opens the door for us to get into different avenues and breaking down barriers that usually we can't get to. There's so many things that he has done through Cosby Media Productions, and is continuing to grow. And I'm just gonna I hype him up, because this man really brought Menzuo to a different level back in 2005, and I can't wait to continue to share this with him. So I would like to bring Braxton on to speak on that as well.
Hey, thanks so much, man. I appreciate all the love, but even more than that, I'm appreciative of being on another platform of people of color, and who are allowing us to just get our voices out. So thank you for having me today. I'm really excited. Anytime I can get a chance to just talk about about speculative fiction, and of course, anything relating to African American literature or people of color who are occupying a space which was not really we weren't invited into, is always a blessing and is always very powerful. So like Keyshawn said, the vision came to me years ago of basically going into writing myself, and then even building out a company that would just really influence readers of every age, every ethnicity, and any location in the world. And books are great because they allow you to do that. Once you get them and you do worldwide royalties in sales, it can go to anybody. So the power of putting a story together that you think will hopefully unite people, or even just show people of color in a different light, being intelligent, being daring, being bold, falling in love, and having great relationships. And of course, being heroes, when you talk about our superhero series, is just really a powerful platform. And it's a blessing for me, especially if I can not just share my own stories, but share stories with authors like Keyshawn who have amazing narratives and prose. It's always just a privilege, to be quite honest. And anything I can do to help continue to move that forward, where we're seeing people of color in a different light, and one that's positive, way more than the negative tones and stereotypes that are out there, is something I always just jump to. So again, we're a publishing company that has over 30 authors in our stable. We've published over 60 books in ebook, paperback, and audiobook platform. And my vision always from the beginning was to take books that I was interested in. So when we get people who send in writings that they want us to look at, hey, am I interested first? Once I'm there, then is this something that I think has possible next level range to go even beyond just a book, but can it become a TV series? Can it become a web series? Can it become an animation? Can it become a film? If those books speak to that kind of drive and range, then that's what we go with. And I feel very strong about all the books that we've brought into the fold. And, and those are people of any color and nationality who've added to what we have, because at the end of the day, we may know our roots and we may know where everybody comes from, but not everybody does. So if we can continue to just expand our horizons and our reach and really preach a message of unity. And at the end of the day, the only thing that's black and white in our books is the words and the pages. We want people to just see characters and fall in love with them. And it's just a bonus when we can bring all people of nationalities together to actually create stories that, in the case of our superhero stuff, we've actually woven them into this connected universe. So, Menzuo's got 5 books in the stable, and I've got 2, and we've united some other characters, but we've got a ton of superheroes that are not just, African American descent, but we've got everybody Italian and European and all of that. So we feel very great about the opportunities we've been afforded to do that, and really just show, hey, man, everybody can be a hero, but you've got to make the decisions to step forward and do what you can in your arena. And that's what we're trying to do with our writings, and hopefully our stories are preaching that same kind of message.
Right.
Hey, Braxton, I got a quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just wanted to let you know this is a black show, man. You can be black all day on this show, man. You don't need to take people of color. All right. Just want to let you know, brother. Second question is, I'm an avid comic book reader, and one of the things I've noticed, and you can probably confirm this, is I've been to Comic Cons in Boston and New York and some local Kinetic Cons here in Connecticut, and I'm seeing more and more black artists and black comic book writers and creators at these Comic Cons. Are you seeing a trend locally, nationally with that?
Yeah, we go to a lot of the cons as well, and we were so happy 2 years ago that Atlanta finally got their own Comic-Con. And I get a chance to walk around the convention booth spaces and kind of see what's out there. And down here in Atlanta, there's a couple of folks that I run into quite often. They actually do comics, and we write comic book novels. So we kind of run into each other. We go to some of the comic book conventions as well. So I love it, because then they come back with something new the next year. I get a chance to buy what they got. They got a chance to buy what I have. And it's very encouraging. And it's not just black folks buying it. It's everybody buying it, because, I could tell you, a lot of the authors, look, if you're going to win, you have to it has to be clean. It has to look like what's in the mainstream. It just can't be something that looks like you put it together and you bring it out there and want people to read it. It's got to look the part first. So a lot of these comic book writers, they're doing some fantastic stuff, amazing artwork. I flipped through the pages myself, and it's very clean, and it looks and reflects what Marvel and DC have done over the years. So that's where you have to start with, because first thing people do at these conventions, they pick up the book and they start flipping through it. If it looks crazy, it's not formatted right, chapters look out of place, and you got a couple of words from the first page that are grammatically incorrect, they don't buy it, So it really encourages me when I see a lot of brothers and sisters out here doing so many great things with their stories, and they're telling these really imaginative tales that show Black characters doing their thing. So it's I say that we're continuing to take steps in the right direction, and it's not just the typical stories that are out there. They're actually starting to push the envelope and move towards really with superheroes, to me, and even science fiction itself, we have a chance to tell a story with regular themes and tales, but you've got these people who have superpowers, and that's really the only thing that's different, So of course you'll have these great action moments in these sets, but at the end of the day, I like to tell stories that are gritty, and these are people who you might just meet on the street, might be your cousin, might be family members, and you relate to who they are as a person first, and then on top of that, you paint all the great action and set pieces that go along with writing superheroes.
Right, and to add to that, Rob, going to these Comic Cons and being able to see different authors. The one thing I can say that the market isn't watered down or saturated, or everybody's trying to do the same thing. There's so many different stories from different people's backgrounds that you can see from Black artists and authors that are writing comic books, the novels, and the stories. And the best thing about it is that they support each other, and we all build this network of support. And so you want to see everybody achieve it. It's one of the areas that I can say as an author that everybody wants to see you succeed, because if your success is growing, they can have that success. And so it's great to make sure that you push each other. And you see it at Comic Cons, like Braxton said, you're buying their books and they're selling your books, and people help you sell your books at the Comic Cons because they want you to be successful, and you do the same for them. And for me up here, the best one that I've been to is the East Coast Black Agents of Comic Con in Philadelphia. And, it was one of the best ones to walk into and to see all Black artists, authors, movie makers, all in the same area. And the kids coming in, the fans coming in, the new people that we met. Those are the type of events that you want to be at, because now you can get your hands directly into people's hands that didn't know you, that may have known you, and know that you're going to be at this Comic Con. They can meet you, talk to you, and actually get your book signed. Those are the best moments that you have as an author.
Let me ask you this in terms of.
So let me ask you, as an author, how important is it to create Black storylines? Because I know growing up, like Rob, I'm a comic book head. I grew up on Marvel and DC, going back to 1970 and before. So, and very rarely seeing characters that look like me with just regular stories, not necessarily coming from, the worst part of the ghetto, and all of a sudden he did time in jail like Luke Cage and got superpowers. Talk to me about why it's important to show normal people in normal life situations who just happen to have superpowers. Why is that so important for Black people? Because being a Black man growing up, in order to be Thor, I had to be, have white skin and blonde hair. Nothing wrong with that,
right?
But I need to see me. So talk about why that's important.
Right.
Well, I think that there's a trend of inclusion, right, that's starting to go around, and I think we've kind of seen that in the last maybe 3 to 5 years, where there's inclusion of everything, and it's slowly moving. But Black people have been in the forefront of inclusion for the longest, obviously dealing with segregation and slavery and whatnot. So our big message has always been we want to be included. We wanted to see at the table. So we've been fighting and clawing for that, but now everybody is getting a piece of the pie. So it's important to continue to move our narrative to the forefront to say, hey, we've been here for the longest. The success of Black Panther was really amazing because obviously we didn't do that with just Black folks alone. That movie made $1 billion, and that's just not Black dollars. So obviously as we look at it in the industry as writers, it's like, hey, you know, people are willing to accept this, and Black Panther didn't move away from its blackness by any means. You know, you know, Wakanda technically would be spiritually Africa, and so they had a system of tribalism still going on. They had this beautiful backdrop with, and you really felt that queen and kingship in the story, and obviously people accepted it. They, you know, you don't make $1 billion on a film by seeing it one time. People went back multiple times to see it, so it was something that they were accepting and willing to dive in and try to understand. So as we continue to write our stories, yes, there's inclusion where you've got different ethnicities throughout the book, but the main characters continue to take the spotlight. And those are stories about Black folks. And it's about, you know, for me in the Cape, it was about writing about Chicago. And obviously, you know how bad crime and things can be there. But it was about a character who grew up in the inner city early on, but his uncle planted a seed in him because he realized that he was intelligent and said, hey, listen, I'm gonna pay for you to go to school. I'm gonna pay for you to do all this. And when you come out, you'll be able to inherit some money to get your stuff off the ground. You know, he's a tech head. So there was this value of getting to a place and reaching back and helping somebody, whether they were close to you, like him being his nephew, or even people who are just in the same arena trying to get where you are. And there's so much value in doing it. That's something that we have to continue to do as a people is when we make it to a level of success, how willing are we to help other people get to that level as well, so we can continue to sow a seed in one another. So those are the stories that I'm trying to tell influentially through my writing. So one, if you aren't a person of color, you're actually seeing Black people in different light. And then two, you're appreciating the spirit of acceptance and inclusion in my writing, so that hopefully that makes you a little bit more willing to include and help and so forth. So it becomes that whole iron sharpening iron idea. And, you know, I'm hopeful that that continues to move in the industry across all realms, whether it be TV, film, or a novel.
Right. So just to piggyback on that too, Daryl, as an educator, you know, teaching in the inner city in Springfield, right out of college, going to Homer Street Elementary School, and knowing that the kids that I had in my class weren't interested in education, they weren't interested in reading, and also being in school, because just the atmosphere that they were in, that I had to change the narrative for them. And I went to my principal, Bobby Renix, and I taught Dr. Bobby Renix, and I told her, please let me read something to him or do something special with this class, and she allowed me to. At that time, my book Miserable was a manuscript. I started reading to the kids. They got interested in the book. They knew that the characters was Black. They knew that, you know, he didn't have a woe is me story. He didn't even know his story. He thought he was just, you know, his father's a lawyer, his mother is an educator. He was growing up as a good kid in Springfield, Massachusetts. And then he, as his 11th birthday, his 12th birthday comes along, he starts to see things change, in that he inherited some superpowers. And then other things started to happen. But he didn't have this woe is me, you know, broke background, but he had a stable life, and, you know, a middle class, affluent life that he can grow in. And then next thing you know, he has all this stuff happening around him. So for me to have my kids see a character that looks like them, that sounds like them, and also to be able to relate to that character because he was based in the city that they're in, going to schools that they know of, seeing the area that they see in their books, that made them want to be more apt to go to school, read other books, and they changed their narrative of what education was, because their teacher, who was Black, created a Black superhero that they knew about, they loved, and it just blew up from there. So the story took care of itself because it came from a part of pain from me. And, you know, that we'll get into later, but the way that my characters and my books are shaped is shaped to make sure that kids love education. They see a character that they love, and they also can grow with them. We did the same thing with the Cape. We did it with the Majesties of Canaan with Kyle Champion. Unfortunately, couldn't be here today, but we brought all of our characters together to start the Dark Sports novels, so kids can see different characters. The main characters that you have are Black, but we also, like Greg said, we have characters that anyone can grow up with and see and grow to love. But we always make sure that our strength and our words and our narrative, it comes from that Black voice.
Okay. So I'm gonna seg real quick. We're gonna come back. I want to talk about authors, but I also want to introduce.
Can I jump in?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm listening.
Cool. I felt like I cut you off.
Okay. Oh, that's Ayaba. Okay, I was like, okay, who's talking? So what I want to do, I got a quick intro for Ayaba. Don't do that. I have a quick intro for Ayaba, and then I'm gonna talk with him. Y'all ready? Here we go.
Sir.
What are you doing? Here, Ayaba.
Billions of dollars were poured into Iraq, and no one said a word until New Orleans levee broke and almost drowned an entire state in domestic neglect. Backstroking through New Orleans, smelling death and hope.
Just wanted to share like all of my talents. I think that was the start of the idea. Knew I was a poet, knew I was a painter. Never really, I had a bunch of people who didn't know that I did both things. Some people knew me as a poet, some people knew me as a painter, and I wanted to really take both things and figure out how to do them all on stage at the same time so I could share everything. And that was like the start of the idea.
I am trying to figure out what is on your mind. Rest is not an option. A father let his wife slip away to save their kids today live on CNN.
When I first started doing the play, I was using brushes in the play. I did a production in New Jersey and one night, and I actually forgot my brushes. Get inside and the audience is waiting on me. I can't find the brushes anywhere. And so I realized that I'm gonna have to ad-lib that night. And that was like another one of those epiphanal moments for me, because I actually connected to that painting, even though I had been doing it for maybe 2 or 3 years to that point. I connected to the painting closer than I ever had to that point. The whole idea of tactically touching with my hands, finger painting, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, it just, it made the process almost like a creating myself, rather than the brush, which is sort of like, a go-between, like interrupter. My hands actually were able to, touch the paint, and I'm actually felt like I was making myself, like molding myself back over on the canvas.
So sister, can you help me out? Can you spare some time? I am trying to figure out what is on your mind. Why don't you love freedom? Why don't you love you? Why don't you stand up with me when I stand up for you?
Mine started around my heart. The roots go down to my toes. 18 years ago, they started sprouting out of my brain like cousins and tennis.
Why don't you love freedom? Why don't you love you? Why don't you stand up with me when I stand up for you? Brother, sister, brother, sister, brother, sister, brother, sister.
All right, y'all. That's my man, Ayaba Mandingo. I've known this brother for about 30 years, Southern Connecticut State University.
Wow.
Been about 30 years. He's a writer, he's a poet, he's a playwright, he's a musician. Introduce yourself, and then we're on the same conversation. We're talking about Black narrative. When I listen, we've had conversations in the past on the radio about your work and how you're a storyteller. So just quick introduction of yourself, and then tell people about you.
Ayabi Igbo Mandingo. Jele. That's as he said. I've really been mining that definition because there are so many pieces to it. But I'm a Jele. And I think all of us do come from a long line of continuing the oral tradition of telling our story and passing it forward. And listening in, I'm sure that all of us are Jeles. That's my work behind me. I don't know if you guys see all of it. It's all over the place. Studio. I heard brother, and I love the dedication. So I think I should piggyback. I read something Brother Chadwick said, that when he stands before his creator, he wants to be able to say that he used all of his talents, and I believe that completely. And I subscribe to that. Subscribe to that completely. I think when I was younger, man, I wanted to be about. I used to ask the creator, why didn't I have Michael Jordan skills? You know, to dunk a basketball and buy my family, everybody in my family, a mansion to take care of my mama. You know what? I'm a historian. They don't remember basketball players. They remember painters, poets, and writers. We write the truth down. You know, the Renaissance with all of its restrictions. If you want to see what it's really like, go check the poets out. It's like we can infiltrate underneath the madness and tell you the story. And so I feel really, really driven by that importance. And then when you talk about us as African people, as Black people, I think it's even more important to realize the job we have. Yes, write it down. Realize we come from this. The reason that we were broken is because that link of oral history that had been going for generations and generations is probably one of the biggest things that slavery destroyed, was our ability to pass our stories forward. So me, Darryl and I share that. We come from the same homeland. We lost that link. So when you talk about Anansi and Mokojumbi and all the folklores and Jumbi and Janbul, all the folklores from our culture, and also for African American brothers and sisters, those things that our people told that were used as devices to give moral lessons and proverbs and put those things forward, they're eliminated. So now we pick up everybody else's narrative. And I know for me, somebody that studied painting and had my teacher argued with my painting teacher about the masters and about, you know, when I went and she said to find 5 masters I could model, and I went and got 5 Black masters. We back and forth for weeks until I finally said, oh, you meant white masters. And then she was stuck because I went and got Jacob Lawrence and I got Faith Ringo and I got Norman Lewis. You know, I got masters. You know what I'm saying? But she wanted Picasso and Renoir and Cezanne, and she didn't say that. So once I made her say that, she got it. And I went and I studied them, and it was great because Cezanne's palette is incredible. You know, and Picasso's ability to mimic our African culture is incredible. But then I hit that wall where I was like, okay, so I've run out of inspiration for that. So where else can I go for inspiration? And I had to go to Africa, literally physically go there and see that we invented Cubism, even though I read about it. But actually see that we think that way. We think 3-dimensionally. We think of a person from this way and this way and that way. This is how we approach each other. When we talk about each other, we talk about the whole person. My brother, our physicalities, everything about it. I realized that that's why we invented art. And then I also realized that because it's in everything, like in our walking, in our buildings, and in our decorations of our spoons and our knives and our forks, that for years and years, Europe got away with saying that we didn't do art. But now who got the biggest African art collections in the world? Europeans, who steal it privately and in the museum. So is it important? Yes, because if there's no Octavia Butler, there is no Black Panther. And you know, kudos to Stan Lee for being a white man whose eyes were open enough, and so he wanted to write those things and infiltrate those things into his comic books. Kudos. But we come from a long. If you touch Octavia Butler, just her alone, we could write science fiction forever and ever. Amen. And she basically gave us permission to not have to go to outer space to write science fiction. Science fiction is our juju. Science fiction is what they call animism. Science fiction is all those things we have. Thor is Shango. You know, and I practice Ifa, and you know what it was like to go to the Babalawo. And I heard Dee talking about this, to go to the Babalawo and tell her, read my head and tell me that I am Shango. And all my life I've been going, man, I can't be Thor. And then to learn that Thor was copied off of Shango. So we don't have any choice but to tell our stories. We don't have any other duty than but to continue it. And if we have to make it up and make it make sense, yes. My first children's novel is, I asked back as far as my mother and them knew. It was about the silver bracelet that everybody, all the women wear in our family, that they fight over, that carries the tradition, but it also carries the blood of our family. So from my great-grandmother, Rosamond Guy, back, they didn't know. So then I go and research and find a couple more generations. And I used on that, I just extrapolated back and invented our culture so that my grandchildren can one day pick up and get an essence of the fact that we have a continuum. We have this thing that goes back and continue our narrative and continues our fables and our folklores. It's so important now because, again, as a historian, I know that time circles. So 100 years ago it was called the Roaring 20s because the young people said, to hell with that. And I feel like that time is now another time where we got to start thinking about things like new ways of looking at things, new ways of teaching our children. I don't mean mimicking their way. I'm talking about completely new things that come out of the genius of us, and figure out ways to move all of our stories forward, all of them. You know, in the theater, like all this time right now, I can't wait to start putting out and sharing some of the stuff that I've been writing based just on this time period that the universe has stopped and said, y'all need to stop for a second and recognize. So yeah, that's my talk, and why we should write black, and why I'll say the last thing. In painting class in college, when G&I was in school, I remember one of my white homeboys asking me, Ayaba, how come you only paint black people? And I turned to him and said, well, didn't we just sit through 2 semesters of art history? Yeah. How many paintings do you remember seeing with black people in it? He was stuck. I said one. It was by Rubin. It was called An African Slave. It was brother standing up with a vase like that. He's like, yeah. I said, I know you don't remember it. It was one. We looked at like 3,000 paintings. I said, well, it's my job to make sure that if one of my grandchildren want to take art history, they don't got to do that. Even if the only painting they see to break up that chain of white is mine. So I don't paint white people. And I don't write stories about white people. And I don't write poems about white people unless I'm chastising them or pulling their coats.
And that's true. Anybody? Farrah, what are you thinking?
Oh, well, I was just thinking, I wanted to echo what Kayshawn was saying earlier about the passing of Chadwick Boseman. I know that's pretty heavy, especially on the Black community, but it also kind of made me think of Black Panther and like how I felt when I first seen it. And there was many different messages it gave everybody, but I think some of the messages it gave me was like the importance of, knowing who you are, knowing where you come from, knowing where you could go. And I think when I go back to your original question of why Black representation is so important is because I think without seeing ourselves not only in films but in books and fashion and media and everything, I don't think we'll be able to really see our worth. And because so much has been taken from us as Black people, no matter where you come from in the culture of the diaspora, it's really important to know your history and know that you have greatness within your DNA. And so I think without representation, we won't really get into Black liberation. I think that's kind of been on my mind, especially with, the Black Lives Matter movement going on. Black liberation looks different for all Black people in some ways, but I think what it really means is for us to be totally free in whatever we're doing and whatever we want to do in the future and whatever kind of legacy we want to leave behind for future generations. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do with my own platform. As I mentioned before, I'm an artist and a producer here in Boston. So the artist side, I do a lot of illustrations. And all my illustrations are always about Black people just because I love us for real. And I really want to celebrate us in all different types of forms. And I just got to be real too. I think, there's certain Black people we don't always celebrate, such as queer Black people, trans Black people. People who may talk a different way or come from a different side of the planet or whatever. And I think through my art, I really want to show that, we're all great in our differences. And we fight so much, like we have colorism, we have sexism, we have so many things I think that kind of pull us from each other as Black people. And if we were really just able to embrace all of our differences, I think that's how we get Black liberation. And another thing, as a producer on my show, I always celebrate Black people within the Boston community, but it's also a way for me to share some of the resources, because there's a lot of when we're thinking about superheroes, right? There's a lot of superheroes we know in our own neighborhoods, a lot of unsung heroes that we don't always talk about or celebrate. And I kind of use my platform as a way for them to come on and share whatever they're doing in the community, whether that's events, or if they're really encouraging people to vote, or caring more about their mental health and wellness, and kind of showing those resources with the community, but also getting artists on there. A lot of the artists that are on my show are like new artists in Boston, and I really want to embrace their caterpillar stage, because I think one common thing a lot of the artists have said on my show is that they don't always feel supported, or they only feel that they will get support when they reach a certain height, or if they become popular. And for me, being an artist myself, I know it's really important to have someone to be like, you could do this. Or even if you don't know how to do it, be like, all right, how are we going to get there? That accountability, that kind of support is what kind of pushes you forward to living your dreams. So that's something I do on Fahrenheit TV, is just selling people's greatness in all types of forms. And so Black representation is so important to me. I know when I was growing up, the only time I saw Black representation was really on TV, because I went to so many different schools. I had really bad asthma as a kid, so I was always switching schools. But anytime I was able to learn something in the classroom, we weren't really learning about Black heroes, to be honest with you. A lot of the characters we read in books were all white people. And, you know, I'm not saying their stories are not important, but I can't relate to them. You know what I mean? So for me, the people that I was able to relate to and kind of seeing, you know, greatness and superpowers or whatever was people I saw on TV. So all of those sitcoms I was watching, even though I know now, like, people dissect them and be like, oh, something was wrong with this, or they should have done that. I think in a way it was great to just kind of have those, that, you know, just to have that representation, just to see that you were seen and that you were celebrated, and to kind of have it as a way to be like, all right, say you didn't like something in this show, what can you do now as a creative to make it better? Like, you know what I mean? Kind of encourages you to kind of create your own type of legacy to leave behind for the future generation. So Black representation is important in so many different levels. And I think it kind of goes back into Nina Simone being like, you know, her famous quote of saying that an artist's duty is to represent the times. And I think us being creatives in all the different fields that we have to represent the times, and we have to do that so other future generations, when they look back at footage like this that we're doing right here on the show, they can know that their greatness is possible, and that they could do anything, and they could be liberated, and they could express themselves and be free, because this country is taking our freedom away from us every minute. So Black joy is so, you know, Black joy and Black liberation is so important, and it's revolutionary. So I'll end it with that.
All right.
You know,
and,
can I say
I like what you said in terms of seeing yourself, your imagery, your art. Was that me? Who's gonna say something?
That was me.
All right. So I'm gonna play this quick clip from the cast.
My mom, I remember when we were growing up, she looked for black dolls to give us, and she couldn't find any. She found one black boy doll that my sister got. She was so keen to give us, to feed our subconscious, and now we get to give this to our children.
Well, this is so important. It's such a big Black deal. Why do you think Black superheroes matter? Specifically, why does Black Panther matter?
I spent a lot of time, you know, as a youth, looking up to white superheroes and buying into that idea.
We haven't seen a lot of Black superheroes on our screens, and it's refreshing to have the continent of Africa being explored in this way.
Oh, my inner child is so happy right now. It's important to see yourself, or a reflection of yourself, a reflection of a member of your family as a king.
To have a Black Panther, the Black man superhero and his entire nation is powerful, because it means that we can see ourselves in this movie quite directly.
To be able to, you know, be clear that we can accomplish and do anything, even if it seems superhuman, we have the capacity to make things happen.
So I feel like to reach that hero inside of yourself, it's important for that to look like you at times, or for it to be a possibility that it looks like you.
You know, he's just incredibly noble. You know, and that idea of nobility is not something that's often applied to people who come from and live on and have ancestry to the continent of Africa.
To take us to this land, running a nation, a king, and a hero. And not alone, but heroes there that support you, your mother, your spiritual advisor, your counsel, your friend, your general, your love, your siblings, without limitation or without boundaries. So it's aspirational in that.
It's a way of reclaiming and reestablishing and redefining a history that was kind of given to you. And they're going to be kids who are going to be able to like ingest this kind of content while they're developing, before all the narratives and isms are placed upon them and who they can and should be. And for them to be able to see this at that age tells them that the ceiling isn't where you see it. There's no ceiling. You could do that thing.
And we know within ourselves on our best days that we too are everything.
What's up? I'm PJ with The Root. We want to bring you more.
All right, so what do people think about that?
You know, it's interesting when you watch that clip. Did you mute me? Can you hear me?
Now go ahead, Rob. And we hear you.
Man, listen. Don't make me come after y'all. It's interesting when you see that clip and you hear that clip, just you can see the pride in everybody as they're explaining the impact of what this movie's bringing. But even from the veterans, and I gotta say, you know, Angela Bassett's flawless, gee. But even from the veterans, just that pride and just listening to everybody on the call, they talk about inspiration. So we talk about inspiration. You know, a lot of these comic book characters were inspired by African folklore, right? I mean, Ayaba, you talked about Thor, but there's countless other ones there. When you talk about when you were in art class and going through all these white artists, a lot of those folks from back then were inspired by African art and African artists, but you don't talk about that. So I got a story to share with you, Ayaba, you know, a Southern story. I was in Chase Hall at Southern, and I was in the lounge watching BET, you know, Donnie Simpson. I'm dating myself. And some white kids get off the elevator, and they're talking about BET. Why do you have to have black entertainment television? What's all that black stuff? So I literally clicked every channel on the cable box that was white, back to BET. So when you talked about that kid questioning you in art class, their culture is so prevalent, they don't even realize it. You see what I'm saying? It's, you know, it's amazing. But this is a great conversation. This is a great discussion. And when we talk about controlling our narrative, this is an important way to control our narrative.
You know, I wanted to comment on that clip because one of the things when I look at that clip, and I remember watching that clip when it first came out, but when I look at that clip, one of the things that I see is you don't just see pride of people because of the movie and the project, but when you look at the crew that worked on that film as well, it wasn't, what was most impressive to me learning about the making of Black Panther wasn't just that it was a movie starring Black people about a Black superhero in a Black nation, but a lot of the crew that worked behind the scenes to make that movie possible were also Black. The director was Black, the writers were Black, you know, and so that clip really showed not only how aspirational this character is, but how aspirational the people who made this character come to life on film are. Because I think we talk a lot about our superheroes, and you know, and someone had said during this particular broadcast, talking about, you know, some of our unsung heroes. Barry talked about our unsung heroes that she deals with in Boston, and I think you got to look at a guy like Ryan Coogler and call him one of those unsung heroes for all of the films he's made, the people he's dealt with, the things he's insisted as he's gotten more negotiating power. So what I get from that clip is not just how inspirational and aspirational the Black Panther movie